Okay, well, welcome to Food for Thought, everyone. This week I don't have my co-host Dylan Hartley with me. We had some scheduling difficulties, so it just happened to work out where it's only me this week. So at least you'll get all the the right answers this week. So as always, tune into the Mothership Show on Mondays, Knuckle Sandwich every Thursday, Fantasy 15 every Friday, and Ducks on the Pond every Sunday. So this week the topic that we're going to talk about is, well, actually let me back up. Let me just want to give a quick introduction since Dylan isn't here to do it for us. Tom Brady is taking, and Leighton talked about this on the Monday show, Tom Brady is taking less and less money for a pay cut so that they can have a better team around him. But where's that money going? How does that make sense? I don't understand it. You got nobody on offense. You got nobody around him. You got marginal players on defense. You have, money being spent on maybe 2 or 3 players, and that's about it. Where's all the money going? I'll leave it at that. I don't want to sit here and talk all day about Tom Brady and the Patriots like no one's feeling sorry for them. But anyway, this week's show, it's a good one. I've been looking forward to it. It's about how players from previous eras would fare in the social media era that we have today. And really, I'm going to talk about 6 players, but I'm going to try to address 2 questions for each player. So the first question is, how would they be affected by social media? And honestly, every player that I'm about to name here, Dylan and I came up with 3 guys apiece. Every player that I see here, I honestly don't see them faring better in social media. You're looking at guys like Kevin Durant, Tom Brady, LeBron James. These guys who are amazing athletes in their time and their sport, and I really don't think they're truly appreciated the level that they should be solely because social media. Yes, it does. Social media does bring you closer to the athlete, which is amazing. You get to see more into their life. Growing up, when I'm only 24 or 5 now, but growing up when I was younger, I always wanted to know more about professional athletes. Like, what are they doing? I never got this kind of experience or exposure, and now it's just like we're consumed by it. But being consumed and having that exposure of these athletes, it really kind of magnifies any blemishes, any faults, any shortcomings they have in their career. You know all about their personal history, and so I'm gonna start by talking about Michael Jordan. He is one. I was bouncing ideas off Dylan and off of Brandon, Drake, and Leighton, and we all 3 unanimously said, yeah, MJ, obviously, you got to talk about MJ. So the first thing with MJ, we all know, 6 for 6, greatest player of all time, averaged 31 points per game for his career, and did that in the finals too. Never had a Game 7. So dominant in what's considered the modern era relatively. Even though we are kind of moving on from the 90s. Even when you look at the physicality, the physical stature and ability of players compared to then. So 3 things that would definitely affect Michael Jordan though for his impact on his career. The first one, Steve Kerr. I don't know if everybody's heard the story or not, but Michael Jordan did punch Steve Kerr in the face one time during practice, and I even said after after the Cavaliers' Game 1 final loss to the Cavs after J.R. Smith dribbled out the clock with, the game was tied in regulation, I said LeBron, instead of punching the whiteboard, should have punched J.R. Smith. He should have channeled his inner Michael Jordan, which everybody wants him to do more. They want him to be more like Mike. He should have channeled his inner Michael Jordan and punched J.R. Smith in the face instead of the whiteboard. Probably wouldn't have broke his hand, could have taken his frustration out. Neither here nor there. But anyway, MJ, he did punch Steve Kerr. So that was a big deal. I mean, it didn't get reported at the time, but I mean, think about it like this. Think if LeBron did punch J.R. Smith in the face, they'd be like, "Oh my God, well, not much of a teammate guy now." You could have all kinds of horrible things to say about LeBron, like what kind of example does this set for kids, other players that want to play with him, what's it going to be like now? And then on top of that, Michael Jordan, I don't know how many people are actually aware of this, but he did have issues with adultery, wound up cheating on his wife, getting divorced. I don't want to go into that. And then also, he did have a bit of a gambling addiction. He would play, the Nets and the Knicks in the finals, and he would frequently take trips to Atlantic City to play cards, bet on whatever the case may be that he was betting on. And that turned into a bit of a problem for him. And I'll just go ahead and go back and forth with MJ and LeBron on this comparison. If you look at MJ, he has the issues with adultery, he has the issues with gambling, the gambling addiction, which I'm not here to shame anybody for having, trouble in moderation. If you have trouble in moderation in that area, you definitely should reach out and get help. But LeBron, he doesn't have any of these kind of off-the-court issues. About the only one you could think of is that he really likes to drink wine. I follow him on Instagram and Twitter and stuff, and he posts a lot of stuff about wine. But you got to think, LeBron is so heavily scrutinized and he has no issues off the court. You can't help but think that these issues would carry over onto the court. People would be overly scrutinizing Michael Jordan and maybe even appropriately scrutinizing him for some of these issues, but you would have to think that there would be some carryover effect. And we all know about how, petty Michael Jordan can be. We saw that from the Hall of Fame induction. He had the person who made the high school basketball team over him as a sophomore invited, and he personally talked about that and his head coach. And he talked about a lot of different issues, and it really showed you how petty Michael Jordan really could be at times. But because of the shield and the brand that he's created, it's got this aura of defense around Michael Jordan. So the legacy of Michael Jordan just gets stronger as we go. Now, I'm not saying these issues that get magnified and expanded on because of social media turned Michael Jordan from a 6-for-6 finals champion averaging 31 points per game to 20 points per game and maybe an all-star appearance. That's not what I'm saying at all. But you're going to have some finals losses. You're going to have some maybe difficulty playing with teammates, having teammates approach you, and I think that would definitely show on the court. I think it would show in maybe points per game, field goal percentage, assists, definitely finals. Well, I don't know about finals appearances, but definitely the finals record. You would at least think he's playing a Game 7, maybe in a couple loss or two there. But that's kind of how I see it. And really, I'm not sure how Michael Jordan would use social media. I think he would probably be outspoken if I had to guess. I would think that I think maybe he would run to social media, maybe defend his actions. Maybe he would be one to talk about games. But then again, it's hard to tell, this is all speculation. We have no way of finding out. Sure, he has the Jumpman 23 account and stuff like that now, and he has his personal account. But, it's hard to say what he would have been like in the moment. Would he have been a player that was reluctant to hop on social media? Would he be more like a Damian Lillard, or would he be more like a Kevin Durant who has a burner account? It's really hard to tell. I think your opinion on how he would use it was just based on your opinion of Michael Jordan as a player or a person. So let's go ahead and hop over to Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth is one that I knew I was going to talk about as soon as this topic started, or that we selected this topic. And so I'll just go ahead and start off with Babe Ruth here. It says, he was sent to Catholic Boys Reform School by the age of 8. He was chewing tobacco, drinking, and he was a law-breaking delinquent. But at the Catholic Reform School that he went to, that was where he learned how to play baseball. So I'm not going to sit here and bash a kid or anything like that, but you look at the NFL draft and other things, people pull up tweets from 6 years ago, and it's like, they make a tweet that might be a little bit controversial or something along those lines, and I'm not here to say those guys are right or wrong, but you got to think that a part of Babe Ruth's past, it was adolescence, high school. I don't know about the whole college thing with the MLB back then, but some of Babe Ruth's history was going to be drug up, and whether it was drugged through the mud or not, I'm not entirely for sure, but it would be there at least. Babe Ruth was definitely one for drinking, for partying, for smoking. That's all given. Thing is, though, Babe Ruth is like 6'2", like 210 or 200 pounds. Like that's your SEC shortstop. That's a Georgia shortstop. That's not overly big. But the thing is, for his day, that was a huge. He was a big man. I'll just say that. But then he also had incidents on the field where, he would show up drunk, or he would smoke, or he would swear, and there were times people would throw, the drinks, sodas, food, whatever the case may be that they had at the game, whatever they purchased, they throw it at him, rotten vegetables, that kind of stuff. So you've really got to think that if situations like that and a personality like that was happening today, social media would just explode. I'm sure the MLB would suspend him or something like that, but I personally would give Babe Ruth a follow on Instagram. That would just be hilarious to see some of the stuff he would tweet about. He would be like the voice of Charles Barkley with the burner account of Kevin Durant, except for it would all just be on Babe Ruth's verified blue checkmark profile, and I think that is just so awesome, so genuine, so funny. So again, I think I'm not so sure if Babe Ruth would feel that social media has a negative impact on him, but I definitely feel that it would slight his legacy to some extent, and I definitely think he would use it well. I already said he would be like Charles Barkley and Kevin Durant's burner account, but on his verified account. So that to me is would be really funny to see. The next one we have is Bill Russell. On the surface, Bill Russell looks a little boring, but here's the thing. people talk about him as the greatest champion in North American sports history. They view him, some people mention him as the most dominant player ever, maybe the best player ever, the GOAT, because of the 11 championships. You know, I'm not on that boat, but there's a faction of, or some group of people out there who might say that. But in all reality, you know, Bill Russell, I looked up all of his metric stuff here. He's only 6'9" or 10", and he only weighed about 215 and 220 pounds. It wasn't like he was an overly big guy. I mean, we're looking at a guy in Kevin Durant who's bigger than that, and we think Kevin Durant, you know, is nothing but skin and bones, the Slim Reaper kind of guy, you know. And then on top of that, Bill Russell only averaged 44% shooting from the field. And you got to think about that era, you know. I mean, that era, he was so much bigger and taller than everybody. And the goaltending, offensive goaltending was legal then for the duration of his career. The ball's on the way to the basket, he just jumps up and glides it in, you know. And to think that he's winning all these titles but shooting such a poor percentage and winning MVPs and finals MVPs and things of that nature, you would think that there would be questions about it, you know. It was like when Steph Curry won the regular season MVP on back-to-back seasons, and everybody was like, hold up, wait, like, really? Like, this dude is not better than LeBron James. This dude is not better than Kevin Durant. But you're going to tell us he's the most valuable? I mean, I even know people who would, you know, not consider themselves to be LeBron fans are like, the dude ain't that good. Like, he's not better than LeBron. Sure, he's a great shooter, and I think that same kind of narrative we played about Bill Russell, shooting such a poor percentage, being that much bigger than everybody at the time. Like, people will be like, is he really better than Wilt, though? I mean, like, yeah, sure, he plays on a better team, but Wilt, you know, scores 100 points in a game. He averages 55 rebounds, or he had 55 rebounds in one game. Like, is that, you know, is he really better than him? I think the whole Bill Russell comparison with Wilt Chamberlain, they would be similar to that of Steph Curry and LeBron, but that's just how I think Bill Russell would fare. And again, I really, there's no way of telling, but I really don't think Bill Russell would be one to use social media that much. I think he would be very calculated. Bill Russell's a very quiet guy, but at the same time, I think they had the Players Awards after the finals during the summer. They saw him, you know, flipping off Charles Barkley. He told Mutombo, who did he tell? He told Mutombo, David Robinson, Shaq. He says he pointed all of them. He said, boy, he said, you know, if I was playing now, he said, I'd kick your ass. So I think he would use social media. I think he would be quiet about it, but I think he'd be very calculated in what he did. And so this takes us from one former historical legend to another in Jerry West. He is the logo. If you think about Jerry West, for a decade, really, he was like the guard of the league for the team of the league. Like, he was the guard of the Los Angeles Lakers. And that's really, you know, that's really saying a lot for those eras, because there are a whole lot less teams, and it was an easier route to get to the finals. There were more primetime slots that he could, you know, compete for with less teams. So you had this guy who was highly publicized, and he even won a Finals MVP in a loss and was nicknamed Mr. Clutch. But this is the thing. He went 1 for 8 in NBA Finals. In his 9 NBA Finals, he only won 1, and he was nicknamed Mr. Clutch. Now, people today, I'm going to go back to LeBron, and people can hold their opinions about me for reverting back to LeBron so much, but you go back to LeBron, LeBron's like 3-6 now, I think, or something like that, 3-5, 3-6. And some of those finals, it's like you can't even... You have to applaud him for getting there, even though he lost. Like this most recent year, and then the first year he got to the finals. I mean, like, you have to applaud the guy for taking that team of garbage to the finals. But even then, you know, people want to call LeBron and say he's not a loser, he doesn't have the clutch gene, he's not a winner. But at the same time, Jerry West plays in the same number of finals and wins 1 and nicknamed Mr. Clutch. Obviously, social media would affect him very negatively. He would not have this Mr. Clutch. He would probably have closer... There are some basketball fans out there that don't view CP3 as elite. They view him as the reason why their team never wins, or that team that he plays on never wins, that somehow he is prohibiting them from advancing further. And really, I think... And I don't agree with that narrative at all. It's definitely wrong. But, you know, I think Jerry West would be held closer to that maybe than anything. I mean, he's definitely not going to be called Mr. Clutch. He's probably going to be heralded as the reason why... you know, he can't get to the finals. Oh, if he gets to the finals, he loses. That whole thing. Like, he's not a winner. I think that's the kind of narrative you would hear about Jerry West. And let's go ahead and hop over to another Laker legend here with Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson, he was a 6'9" point guard. He was an infectious, he had an infectious attitude and smile. I mean, like, he could literally light up a room, and it was tangible, it was palpable, you know, it was something that you could feel, it was a presence, and it even carried on the court, too. I mean, the guy would Guy would celebrate wins and buzzer beaters. It didn't matter if it was the NBA Finals or the 13th game of the regular season on a Tuesday in Denver. Like, if he hit a game winner, I'm like, my God, he's going to celebrate it, And he was so over the top, so outgoing, and he had so much flair, so much showtime, obviously, with the Lakers. I think, to an extent, social media would amplify him and boost his narrative or his story or brand or whatever the case may be. But at the same time, and I'm not going to talk much on this, but you have to acknowledge, the HIV whole situation there and how that would have affected it, how he got the HIV virus, whether he could play or not, because he came back shortly for a time, for about a half a season or for a year or so before he finally called it quits. And you just have to wonder, like, the health concerns and the public perception of people, especially, with the political climate we have today, how that would transpire. I think up until that point, Magic Johnson would have received a huge, huge boost in his brand and narrative as a player. Until that moment, I think we would be looking at a steep decline then, unfortunately. And one of the last guys we'll talk about here is actually Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley is basically, in my mind, he's Draymond Green with no title. He's a big loudmouth, talks a lot, plays physical, punches guys, throws guys around, not afraid to fight. And, Draymond Green, he doesn't really throw a whole lot of punches. He's really more of a nut kicker, but and there are some people who might say he's a fake tough guy, that kind of thing. I'm not going to get into all that. But on the surface, Charles Barkley and Draymond Green are pretty similar in play style, stature, how they carry themselves, how they present themselves. It's all very similar. And so I think Charles Barkley would definitely, out of all the players I've listed, I think he would use social media the most. Maybe Babe Ruth might use it more, but I still think Charles Barkley would use social media more than anybody. And I think he would just let anybody have it at any time. It's hard to think of a guy off the top of my head who's really outspoken on social media. Maybe. He's not a huge player. He's not a very good player, but like Enes Kanter, like he is just one with social media. Or Joel Embiid, like those two guys, they really just use social media so well. And they can trigger guys. They can, create tension, stories, headlines. It's really interesting. I think I think Charles Barkley would be most likely to use social media. Again, I'm not so sure if his would be negative or positive. I think it would be like, everybody would follow Charles to see what he would say. His PR people for the Sixers or Suns or wherever he was playing, they would probably hate him, but everybody would love it. So it's hard to think, maybe in a professional setting, it wouldn't be super great for Charles, but at the same time, I think people, as far as fans, would love it, and so I think that would do actually more it would result in more positive outcomes than negative outcomes for Charles. And so this is kind of where we'll leave it. We talked about MJ, Bill Russell, Jerry West, Magic Johnson, Charles Barkley, and Babe Ruth. I can't remember if I said him or not, but this is actually a really interesting topic to me, and I think about this kind of stuff all the time. I think about most of my topics, oddly enough, when I'm working out, running, even mowing the lawn. There's that Reddit page on Reddit. The website where it's like shower thoughts. I think it's pretty much like mowing thoughts for me. But if you guys have any topics and stuff you want to hear about, definitely let me know. I'll be more than happy to talk about them. Tweet them at me. Tweet them at the podcast. I'll be more than happy to, like I said, talk about it. Dylan not here, so I'll go ahead and sign us off. Like I said at the beginning of the show, tune into the Mothership Show on Mondays. Knuckle Sandwich every Thursday, Fantasy 15 every Friday, and Ducks on the Pond every Sunday. Definitely tune into Fantasy 15 every Friday. That's a hot show right now. I tweeted my questions. I'm just trying to figure out how to think outside of the box more. But, stay listening and stay saucy.